Today we're talking about the best poses for couples pictures. It turns out that you don't have to be a model to photograph well. You don't have to love the camera for the camera to love you. In fact, often we will have couples come to us and say before a shoot that they're really nervous because they're not photogenic and they don't think that they photograph well. When I first started in photography, that would make me nervous, but now I just smile. My name's Brenda Bergreen. I'm one half of Bergreen Photography. We shoot a lot of weddings and we've been doing that for the past 10 plus years. And so today I'm going to walk you through some principles, best practices, and poses for couples pictures. Let's get to it. The first thing you need to know when it comes to couples pictures is that poses don't have to be complicated. In fact, the more complicated a pose is, the less I like it because it looks awkward, it looks unnatural, it looks like something that the couple would never actually do. Your main goal is to take a photo that they're going to love because they look like themselves, they feel like themselves, and they're comfortable. One of the easiest ways to do that is to get them to connect with each other, to get them to enjoy the experience, and to get them having fun. When that happens, then they'll naturally fall into some sort of pose that then you can tweak. They'll naturally fall into a pose that's more natural for them to give you a starting point rather than starting from scratch. So let's first, before we talk about poses, let's talk about tweaks that you can make to those natural poses that couples fall into. Posing is less about how complicated of a yoga pose you can get the couple into with precise arm placement and exactly 15 degrees. And it's more about making them feel comfortable so that they look like themselves, so that their smiles are real, so that their laughs are real, and so they look like they're having fun. So to set the stage, first you're going to create a good experience. Posing is actually more about connecting with your clients, getting them to have fun, taking them somewhere beautiful, and making an experience that will naturally make them start having fun. Once the couple's having fun, then you get them to connect with each other. Usually when we start working with a couple, we start by noticing how they naturally interact with each other. Are they super touchy-feely? Do they leave a space between each other? Are they comfortable with PDA? Do they feel awkward every time? Some couples you tell them to get close and they're still 10 feet apart. Some couples you tell them to get close and then you can't get them apart. You tell them to kiss and they start making out. Or you tell them to kiss and they kiss so fast that no shutter could actually ever capture it. Once you kind of see how they interact with each other, you can give them some direction. And you can say something like, hey, when I say get close, get a little bit closer than you think you actually need to because the camera needs you to be closer than you think you do. So normally you wouldn't talk nose to nose, but today, nose to nose instead of here. And you can give them little general tips like that. Another general tip we often get is touch each other. What are your hands doing? How can you be more connected? Hold hands, put your hands on this whole shoulder, put your hand on each other, because then you're gonna look more connected. You know, most of us don't walk around with our hands all over each other. I mean, some of those newlyweds do, but that means we have to kind of instruct our couples to be more physically connected. So those are the kind of main instructions we start out with our couples, is we tell them to connect with each other closer than they normally do and more physically than they normally do. And then from there, we kind of observe how they naturally interact and we give them any adjustments that we need to adjust. Just like with photography in general, you still have to worry about your light and your composition. So sometimes it helps to first get your light, get your framing, figure out what you want the shot to look like, and then start adjusting the pose to fit into that, rather than focus so much on posing that you don't actually have your light and your composition figured out yet. Once you have everything ready, you can kind of tweak whatever the couple is doing to have it look like you want it to look. So you can start with those first two things we talked about. You can start with having them get closer if you need them to get closer. Or maybe you're doing a silhouette, so you need them to get further away from each other. Or maybe you're shooting super wide and you don't want them to look like one blob, so you need them to separate so that the outline is a little bit more defined. So distance from each other, often having them get closer. And then what are their hands doing? If they're standing there nose to nose, but their hands are at their sides, it's gonna look disconnected. And so figuring out how you can just make a slight adjustment to their hands, maybe hand in the pocket, maybe hand on each other, maybe holding hands. Just what are those hands doing? Because that will impact how connected they look in the photo. The next three tweaks all have to do kind of with posture and alignment. So if a couple is looking really flat-footed or just the image is looking really flat, we want to start to add some movement. And sometimes it doesn't even have to be actually moving. Sometimes it's just shifting your weight. So maybe you have them lean their weight onto their front foot. Or maybe you have somebody like pop their leg back behind themselves to give their body more shape. If they're looking really flat and narrow, you can, put a foot back or tilt a head back or just shift the weight so that it doesn't look flat and stagnant. That brings us to the second tweak, which is just posture. So some people are going to naturally have good posture. Some people are going to, have a little bit of that "we've been at the computer all day" slouch. And sometimes when you think about the profile of a person, you might want to have them like roll a shoulder open. And so it's just about little tweaks to their posture to make their images look more flattering. If they're getting a double chin, lengthen their neck. Excuse me. So it's those little posture tweaks that will help like add that more dynamic look and look more flattering on the person. And then the third one is to actually add movement. And so actually have them walk or actually have them dance or actually have them twirl or sway back and forth. Sometimes giving them the direction to shift their weight is not enough to get them off their flat feet, and you have to actually have them get movement. So those are kind of the three alignment posture tweaks that you can make to any natural pose that a couple falls into. If they're holding hands side by side, do they need to stand taller? Do they need to shift their weight? Or do you need to actually have them sway back and forth and move to get more movement in the picture? And then the last two tweaks are more about experience and connection, right? So we're going to get to know our couples, both their personalities and their features, and then we're going to highlight those features. We're going to work with what they got. Everyone has some quality that is really cool that you can photograph well. Maybe it's their eyes, and so you're going to make sure you position the one person so that you can make their eyes really shine in the light. Or maybe somebody has like really cool clothes, and so you're going to really highlight their fashion sense. Or maybe somebody has a hilarious laugh, and you're just going to get the other person telling jokes so that you can capture that laugh. So get to know your clients and work with what they have. If you have a super serious couple, you're probably not going to like tell jokes and make them laugh. If you have a super silly couple, you're probably not going to get them to do serious poses. And so figure out who your couple is and then accentuate their qualities that will make them shine. And then the next one is helping them relax, helping them connect, helping them have fun. And sometimes that just happens naturally throughout the shoot. They start out kind of stiff, and then as they get to know you, they get more comfortable. Sometimes you have to have conversations with them, ask them about their day or their job or something they're passionate about. And sometimes you can rely on one person in the relationship to kind of like help bring the other one out of their shell. Every photographer has a different way that they like to connect with their couples. Some photographers tell a lot of jokes. Some photographers, let the couple just interact and they capture it. So you also have to be true to your personality and connecting with your couples. And a lot of times that's why the couple chose you anyway. So if the couple's looking really flat in the photo, sometimes it's not about posing. Sometimes it's just about getting them to relax or getting them to laugh or getting them to smile. Sometimes it's not about their posture or their arm placement as much as it is about what's going on in their eyes, and that comes down to what's going on in their hearts as well. Let's review really quick those tweaks that you can make to any pose that a couple naturally falls into. You can have them get closer. You can have them touching each other more with their hands, checking their hand placement, making sure they're holding hands or holding each other in some way. Then it comes down to their posture and alignment. So do they need to shift their weight? Do they need to just like adjust a shoulder, open their chest? Or do you need to actually get them moving to add movement to the photo so it doesn't look so flat? And then the last two are about connection, having them connect with each other and having a lot of fun and feeling relaxed and comfortable in front of their camera, and having them be themselves, getting to know them well enough to know if funny poses are going to work for them or if the serious poses are going to work for them, and making sure that you're responding to what works for this specific couple. Now we'll move on to actual poses in case you need ideas or you need direction. A lot of couples really like when you give them direction because they don't know what to do, and that's part of what makes them uncomfortable. Sometimes it helps to have a starting point to give them. And you'll notice that all of these poses, my favorite poses, are the ones that make them feel natural and connected and allow for some candid moments as well. So it doesn't look forced. It doesn't look like, hey, that's the pose my photographer made me do. It looks like, hey, that looks natural and we are in love. Pose number one, simple pose, looking at each other. Grandmas and moms always want to print a photo of the couple looking at the camera. So you have to take some of those, but looking at each other is always a little change that you can make that will add a laugh, that will add a smile, that will get the couple looking more connected in general. Simple pose. Look at each other. And then you make the tweaks we talked about earlier. The second pose is another simple one, holding hands and walking towards the camera. It adds movement to the photo. It adds a journey, a sense of here we are heading off into our marriage to the photo. And the main challenge with this one is to get them looking at each other, which for some people, depending on the terrain, can be challenging to look at each other while you're walking. But you have that same connected element. It kind of builds on the previous pose of simply looking at each other, but now we're looking at each other and we're walking towards the camera. The third pose, holding hands and walking again, but this time we're walking across the frame. I really like this one because we tend to shoot a lot of environmental portraits, and that adds a sense of movement across the frame that adds to our entire composition, just making it a more dynamic photo. This one's a little bit harder to direct because essentially you have to have somebody holding hands and walking, but they're leading the other person somewhere. And some couples get it a lot quicker than others, but once you do it one or two times, and then they kind of understand what's about to happen. You want them open to the camera, walking across the frame. The fourth one is the kiss, but I really like a dynamic kiss. So maybe that means that, you know, the shorter person's on their tiptoes and they're reaching up and kissing, or maybe that means that they're kicking a heel back like in the movies, or a dip can be really nice. Slight dips, I think, are more natural looking than the like really dramatic ballroom dance dip, but those can look cool too. The dramatic kiss is the romantic pose that a couple wants, at least one of from their wedding day. The fifth pose is a real laugh that's a result of connecting. And so this one's more about getting the couple into a position and then having them connect, having them laugh, telling jokes. Different couples respond to different things, but you want to get that real laugh, and that's not usually going to come from you saying, okay, now laugh for the camera. The sixth pose is one of my favorites, and it's a silhouette of their profile or the perfect amount of space between them. Silhouettes just are awesome, and so that's a fun one to try at least one of if you are able to. And sometimes it's just a matter of getting the profile of their faces nose to nose, or if it's a wider shot, they're standing side by side with a little space between them so that you can see the outline. And then the seventh pose is having them standing together on something that breaks the frame. And so it's a pose, but it's also coming down to your composition of how does the pose fit into the overall scenery? And I really like when the couple breaks the frame. You know, their heads are above the horizon, or they're standing on a rock overlooking a valley. That can be just a really dramatic pose. For a quick final note, you'll see that I mentioned in those last ones, it's not even necessarily the specific pose. When I say the couple standing breaking the frame, or you have a silhouette, it's not even necessarily arm here, and now we're doing the Macarena or whatever. It's more about how the couple fits into the overall picture. When it comes to your posing, we think beyond just the couple and what they're doing. We think about the overall scene and the story that it's telling. And so when you talk about couple holding hands walking across the frame, where are they? Where are they going? What story does that tell? Or if they're dancing under the moonlight, that tells a different story. Beyond just posing, we have to start to think about our posing and how it fits into the overall picture and the story that the picture is telling. That's why we want movement. That's why we don't want it to look flat. So in conclusion, we talked through tweaks that you can make to any pose to make a pose better. We talked through some specific poses that you can use. And then we talked about how you have to move beyond the pose to the overall scene of the picture. So when you want to get better at posing, you're going to get better at posing by thinking about the story that each photo is telling. Is this a very romantic couple and they're having this romantic date night? Or is this a super silly couple that just can't stop laughing together, and that's the story of their relationship? We have to remember who these pictures are for. Couples pictures are for the couples that we're shooting them for. They want to look like themselves. Maybe a slightly better dressed, slightly more photogenic version of themselves. But again, I never worry when a couple thinks they're not photogenic. They just haven't had professional pictures taken. And that's the best opportunity for us as photographers to really serve our couples and make them feel beautiful. Couples need no props. They have a built-in prop. They have each other. And when you start focusing on your posing and your couples pictures as storytelling and allowing your couples to connect, relying on their love for each other, you'll have more connected, candid, and natural photos. And then you can make whatever necessary tweaks you need to make to those poses. So what are your thoughts? Do you have any favorite couples poses that I forgot? What element of this seems easy? What element of this seems hard? What do you think about my backdrop here? Does it need a little something? Is the plant too much? Do you care? On a scale of 1 to 10, let me know. And don't forget to like and subscribe, because that's how we get to make more videos. Have a great day.